I sat at the corner of the dining table, the same spot they always gave me, the seat closest to the kitchen, farthest from the conversation. My niece Brooke looked at me with disgust in her eyes and said words that made everyone laugh. "We do not sit with your kind." The whole room erupted. My sister Diana covered her mouth, giggling. My brother-in-law Kevin nodded in agreement. Even my mother looked away. But here is the thing. They had no idea who actually owned the roof over their heads. Before we dive into this story, I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If this story touches you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stay with me because what happened next changed everything about how my family sees me and, more importantly, how I see myself. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how I ended up in that chair being laughed at by my own flesh and blood. My name is Lewis, and I am 35 years old. For as long as I can remember, I have been the black sheep of my family. Not because I did anything wrong, not because I hurt anyone, simply because I chose a different path than what they considered acceptable. My father was a plumber. He worked with his hands every single day of his life until the day he died. I was 12 years old when we got the call. There had been an accident at a construction site. A pipe burst and the scaffolding collapsed, and just like that, my father was gone. I remember standing at his funeral holding my mother Gloria's hand, watching my older sister Diana cry into her handkerchief. But even then, even at my father's funeral, I heard the whispers from my mother's side of the family. They said he was just a plumber. They said he never amounted to much. They said it was a shame he did not leave behind more for his family. Those words burned into my soul. My father was the hardest working man I ever knew. He woke up before sunrise and came home after dark. His hands were rough and calloused, but they were gentle when he tucked me into bed at night. He taught me that honest work was nothing to be ashamed of. He taught me that a man's worth is not measured by the size of his paycheck, but by the size of his heart. When I turned 18, I made a decision that shocked everyone. I became a plumber just like my father. I wanted to carry on his legacy. I wanted to honor the man who gave everything for his family. But my mother cried when I told her. Diana called me a fool. She said I was wasting my potential. She had just gotten into law school, engaged to Kevin, a man from a wealthy family who was also studying to become a lawyer. In her eyes, I was choosing to be a failure. But what none of them knew was that I had a plan. I worked during the day and studied at night. Not college courses, but books about real estate investing and building wealth. My father had always talked about owning property someday. He never got the chance. I decided I would do it for both of us. At 23 years old, I bought my first property. It was a small, run-down house on the east side of town. Everyone thought I was crazy. The roof leaked and the plumbing was shot, and the previous owner had let it fall into disrepair. But I saw potential where others saw problems. I spent every weekend for 6 months fixing that house with my own 2 hands. I replaced the pipes, patched the roof, refinished the floors. When I was done, I rented it out for twice what my mortgage payment was. That was the beginning. Over the next 15 years, I repeated that process again and again. I would find distressed properties, buy them for below market value, fix them up myself, and rent them out. I lived frugally. I drove the same old pickup truck. I wore simple clothes. I never bought anything flashy or expensive. Every dollar I did not spend went back into buying more properties. By the time I was 35, I owned 27 properties across 3 counties. I had formed a property management company under a different name so that no one would know I was the owner. My tenants paid rent to a company called Horizon Property Group. They had no idea that the quiet plumber who sometimes came to fix their sinks was actually their landlord. And here is the part that would have made my family choke on their expensive wine. 3 of those properties belonged to them. 5 years ago, Diana and Kevin hit a rough patch. Kevin had made some bad investments and they were struggling to keep up with their mortgage. The bank was about to foreclose on their beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. I found out through my mother, who was worried sick. So I did something that no one knows about to this day. I contacted the bank, paid off their remaining mortgage, and bought the house outright. Then, I had my property management company reach out to them with a rental offer. The rent I charged them was actually below market rate. I wanted to help them, not hurt them. They never questioned it. They were just relieved to stay in their home. For 5 years, they have been paying rent to my company living in my house, completely unaware that their so-called failure of a brother and brother-in-law was their landlord. But that is not all. When my niece Brooke went off to college 2 years ago, she needed an apartment near campus. Diana called me not to ask for help, but to brag about the nice place Brooke had found. When she mentioned the address, my heart nearly stopped. It was one of my properties. Brooke had been living in an apartment I owned for 2 years, paying rent to my company while treating me like dirt every time she saw me. And my mother, Gloria. After my father died, she struggled financially for years. When her landlord decided to sell the small house she had been renting for decades, she was devastated. She thought she would have to move into a tiny apartment somewhere. Instead, I bought the house and told my property manager to inform her that the new owner wanted her to stay. I did not charge her a single penny in rent. I told the manager to say it was part of a special program for elderly tenants. My mother has lived rent-free in my house for 7 years without knowing the truth. So there I was sitting at that dinner table being mocked and ridiculed by people who literally lived under roofs I owned. The irony was almost too much to bear. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. It was my mother's 72nd birthday, and Diana had insisted on hosting at her house. When I pulled up in my old pickup truck, I could already see Kevin's Mercedes and Diana's BMW in the driveway. I sat in my truck for a moment, taking a deep breath. I knew what was coming. It was the same thing every family gathering. The looks, the comments, the jokes at my expense. But I went anyway because I loved my mother and I wanted to be there for her special day. I had spent 3 weeks making her gift. It was a wooden picture frame hand carved with intricate designs around the edges. Inside was a photo of my father, one of the last pictures ever taken of him smiling in his work clothes after finishing a big job. I had restored the photo digitally and printed it on high-quality paper. It was not expensive, but it came from my heart. Kevin answered the door. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my worn jeans and flannel shirt. His first words were not hello or good to see you. Instead, he smirked and said, "Truck still running, I see." I wanted to tell him that yes, it was running just fine, and by the way, so was the furnace in his house because I had personally made sure it was serviced last month. But I just nodded and walked inside. Diana greeted me with one of her signature hugs. The kind where she barely touched me and pulled away quickly as if I might contaminate her designer dress. She whispered in my ear, "Could you not have worn something nicer?" This is Mom's birthday. I looked down at my clean-pressed shirt and my best jeans. I had actually tried to dress up, but to Diana, anything that did not come with a designer label was unacceptable. Brooke was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. She did not even look up when I walked in. I said, "Hello, Brooke," and she just waved her hand dismissively without taking her eyes off the screen. Her younger brother Justin, however, stood up and walked over to shake my hand. "Good to see you, Uncle Lewis," he said with genuine warmth in his eyes. Justin was 16, quiet and thoughtful. He had always been different from the rest of them. We had a connection that I could not quite explain. Maybe he saw something in me that the others refused to see. My mother was sitting in the dining room looking frail but happy. I walked over and kissed her on the cheek. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, handing her the wrapped gift. She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. But even as she said it, I saw her glance nervously toward Diana as if asking permission to accept my gift. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Kevin dominated the conversation, talking about his latest case at the law firm. He had won a big settlement and made sure everyone knew exactly how much money was involved. Diana chimed in about their upcoming vacation to Hawaii, a 2-week trip to a luxury resort. She looked at me and said, "I suppose you have never been anywhere farther than the hardware store. Have you, Lewis?" Everyone laughed except Justin and my mother, who just looked uncomfortable. Then it was Brooke's turn to shine. She announced that she had been accepted for a prestigious internship at a major marketing firm in the city. Diana beamed with pride. "My daughter is going places," she said. "At least someone in this family knows how to make something of themselves." The implication was clear. I was the one who had not made anything of myself. Through it all, I stayed quiet. I ate my food. I smiled when appropriate. I did what I always did at these gatherings. I survived. But then came the moment that changed everything. After dinner, Kevin suggested we move to the living room for cake and coffee. Everyone started getting up from the table. I stood as well, ready to follow. That is when Brooke stepped in front of me, blocking my path. She looked at me with an expression of pure contempt. "Actually," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "we do not sit with your kind in the living room. That couch is Italian leather. Your clothes might stain it." The room went silent for a split second. Then Kevin let out a laugh. He actually laughed. Diana covered her mouth, but I could see her shoulders shaking with amusement. My mother looked down at the floor, saying nothing. Only Justin looked horrified, his face red with embarrassment for me. "You're kind." Those two words hit me like a punch to the chest. I had been called a lot of things over the years. Failure, disappointment, waste of potential, but "you're kind," that was something different. That reduced me to less than human. That put me in a category so low that I was not even worthy of sitting on their furniture. I stood there for what felt like an eternity. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. But not from hurt. Not anymore. Something had shifted inside me. For 30 years I had taken their abuse in silence. For 30 years I had let them believe whatever they wanted about me. For 30 years I had hidden who I really was because I wanted to know if they could love me, not for what I had. Now I knew the answer. They could not. And in that moment I decided it was time for the truth. I did not yell. I did not storm out. I did not give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Instead, I did something that surprised even myself. I walked calmly back to the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. "Louis, what are you doing?" Diana asked. Her voice tinged with annoyance. "I said we are moving to the living room. I know what you said," I replied quietly, "but before I leave there is something I need to show all of you. Please sit down." Something in my voice must have caught their attention because one by one they returned to their seats. Kevin looked impatient. Diana looked confused. Brooke rolled her eyes. My mother watched me with concern. Justin leaned forward, curious. I pulled out my phone and opened an app. It was the property management dashboard for Horizon Property Group, my company. I had never shown this to anyone. I had never had a reason to, but tonight was different. "Diana," I said calmly, "what is the name of your landlord?" She frowned. "What? Why does that matter?" "Humor me," I said. "What is the name of the company you pay rent to?" She exchanged a glance with Kevin. "Horizon Property Group," she said slowly. "Why?" I turned my phone around so they could all see the screen. It displayed a list of properties, each with an address, tenant name, and payment status. I scrolled to their address. There it was. Their beautiful 4-bedroom house listed as Property 14 with Kevin and Diana listed as tenants. This house? I said the one we are sitting in right now, I have owned it for 5 years. You have been paying rent to my company this entire time. Diana's face went white. "What are you talking about? That is impossible." Kevin grabbed the phone from my hand, scrolling through the information. His jaw tightened as he recognized the details. The purchase date, the mortgage payoff, the rental agreement. All of it was there in black and white. "This has to be some kind of joke," he muttered. "It is not a joke, Kevin. 5 years ago, you were about to lose this house to the bank. I bought it. I saved it. And I rented it back to you at below market rate because, despite everything, you are family." The silence in the room was deafening. Diana looked like she might faint. Kevin kept staring at the phone screen as if willing the information to change. But I was not done. "Brooke," I said, turning to my niece, "what is your apartment address?" Her face went pale. She told me the address in a voice barely above a whisper. I scrolled to that property. Property 22. Brooke listed as the tenant. Rent paid on time every month. Your apartment, I said. The one you have lived in for 2 years. I own that too. You have been paying rent to me this entire time. Brooke's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time in her life, she was completely speechless. And Mom, I said, turning to my mother with a gentler voice, your house, the one you have lived in for 7 years. I bought it when your old landlord wanted to sell. I am the reason you did not have to move. I have not charged you a single penny in rent because you are my mother and I love you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Louis, she whispered. I did not know. No, I said. You did not. None of you did, and that was the point. Kevin finally found his voice. Why? Why would you hide this? Why let us treat you like what, Kevin? Like a failure, like someone beneath you. Like you're kind. I let the words hang in the air. I did it because I wanted to know who would love me when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to know if my family could see my worth without knowing my net worth. I stood up slowly, looking at each of them in turn. For the record, I continued, I own 27 properties. My company is worth over $4 million. I have more money in the bank right now than you will probably earn in the next 20 years combined. But I still drive my old truck. I still wear my simple clothes. I still work with my hands. Because that is who I am. That is who Dad raised me to be. And I am not ashamed of it. Diana was crying now, genuine tears streaming down her face. Louis, I am so sorry. I did not know. If I had known, that is exactly the problem, Diana. I said, my voice firm, but not angry. You should not need to know someone is wealthy to treat them with respect. You should not need to know someone owns your house to speak to them with basic human decency. I turned to Brooke. And you, we do not sit with your kind. Do you understand how cruel that was? I'm your uncle. I have loved you since the day you were born. And you talked to me like I was garbage. Brooke was sobbing now, her face buried in her hands. I am sorry, she choked out. I am so sorry, Uncle Louis. I took a deep breath. I could feel 30 years of pain and resentment trying to claw its way out of my chest. But I would not let it. My father taught me better than that. I am not going to evict you, I said. I am not going to raise your rent. I am not going to punish you for how you treated me. That would make me just like you. I walked over to where my mother sat and picked up the gift I had given her, the wooden frame with my father's picture. Dad always told me something, I said, my voice cracking slightly. He said my worth is not about what I own. It is about who I am when no one is watching. He said I never need to prove anything to anyone. I just need to live with integrity and treat people right. I placed the frame in my mother's hands. This is from Dad and me. He always believed in me, even when no one else did. My mother clutched the frame to her chest, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. I am sorry, she sobbed. I should have defended you. I should have stood up for you. I was so afraid of making waves I let them hurt you over and over again. I knelt beside her and took her hands. I know, Mom, and I forgive you, but you need to understand something. Silence is also a choice. When you say nothing, you are choosing a side. I stood up and looked around the room one last time. This family has some work to do, I said. I love all of you, but I will not accept being treated like less than anymore. If you want me in your lives, it has to be different. Not because of money, because of respect. I walked toward the door. Justin stood up and followed me into the hallway. Uncle Louis, he said quietly, I always knew you were special. I just did not know how much. I put my hand on his shoulder. Stay true to yourself, kid. Do not let anyone make you feel small because of what you do or what you have. Your value is in who you are. He nodded, his eyes glistening. Can we hang out sometime? Just the two of us? I smiled for the first time that night. I would like that very much. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear Diana crying and Kevin talking in hushed tones. My mother was still clutching the picture frame. Brooke had not moved from her chair. I climbed into my old pickup truck and sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel vindicated. But instead, I felt something I had not anticipated. I felt free. The drive home was quiet. No radio, no phone calls, just the sound of the engine and my own thoughts. When I pulled into my driveway and walked into my modest house, I sat down on the couch and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 30 years. The next few days were strange. I went to work like normal, fixing pipes and unclogging drains. My tenants had no idea that their landlord was the same guy crawling under their sinks. And that was okay with me. I did not need recognition. I never did. The first person to reach out was Justin. He called me 3 days after the dinner asking if we could grab lunch. We spent 2 hours at a diner talking about everything and nothing. He told me he did not want to be a lawyer like his father. He wanted to work with his hands, maybe become a carpenter or an electrician. I told him I would support him no matter what he chose. When we said goodbye, he hugged me tight. That hug meant more to me than $4 million ever could. Brooke sent me a long text message a week later. She apologized for everything, not just that night, but for years of dismissive behavior. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking and realized she had become someone she did not like. I texted her back and told her I forgave her, but that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of bitterness. She asked if we could start over. I told her we could try. Diana and Kevin called after 2 weeks. They invited me over for dinner, just the 4 of us. When I arrived, the atmosphere was completely different. Kevin shook my hand and looked me in the eye. He apologized sincerely without excuses. Diana hugged me and held on longer than she ever had before. We talked for hours that night, really talked for the first time in decades. I learned that Kevin had been struggling with his own insecurities, always feeling like he had to prove his worth through money and status. Diana admitted she had been so focused on appearances that she lost sight of what really mattered. We did not fix everything in one night, but we started. My mother and I grew closer than we had ever been. She finally started speaking up at family gatherings, gently correcting anyone who made dismissive comments. She told me she was proud of me, not for the money, but for the man I had become. She said my father would have been proud too. Those words healed something deep inside me that I did not even know was broken. I learned something important through all of this. Revealing the truth was not about revenge. It was not about proving them wrong or rubbing their faces in my success. It was about finally being seen for who I really am. For 30 years, I let other people's opinions shape how I felt about myself. I accepted their judgment as truth, but their judgment was based on incomplete information and shallow values. My father was right. My worth was never about what I own. It is about who I am when no one is watching. It is about how I treat people even when they treat me poorly. It is about building something meaningful with my hands and my heart, regardless of whether anyone else notices or cares. That night at the dinner table, when Brooke said, "We do not sit with your kind," she meant it as an insult. But she was accidentally right. I am not their kind. I do not measure people by their bank accounts or their job titles. I do not look down on honest work. I do not treat family members like strangers because they do not meet some arbitrary standard of success. I am my father's son, and I am finally proud of that without needing anyone else's approval. If you are watching this, and you have ever felt like the black sheep of your family, if you have ever been made to feel less than because of what you do for a living, or how much money you make, I want you to know something. Their opinion does not define you. Your worth is not determined by their limited perspective. Keep working. Keep building. Keep treating people with kindness even when they do not deserve it. And one day you will look back and realize that the only approval you ever needed was your own. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever had a moment where you finally stood up for yourself? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I would love to hear what you have been through. If this story meant something to you, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and join our community. We share stories like this every week, stories about real people overcoming real challenges and finding their way to peace. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Maybe they are going through something similar. Maybe they need to be reminded that their worth is not measured by what others think of them. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope wherever you are in the world you find the courage to stand in your truth and the peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Take care of yourselves and remember your value is not for others to determine. It belongs to you and you alone.